Hello and welcome back to Pepper Knits. I'm Emily and I'm a knitter based in Perth in Western Australia, and thank you for joining me for this project vlog. It has been such a long time since I shared a project vlog. In fact, I've only ever made one on this channel. It was for the Salty Days sweater, and I really enjoyed sharing the process of knitting a single project from start to finish and providing updates on smaller things as I was doing them. I've had the yarn for this project for a couple of months now, and it's finally time to get it onto the needles. I am making the Knitty committee top, which is designed by Lily Kate Makes. I have been wanting to make this since I first saw pictures of the pattern on Instagram. I very nearly applied to test knit this, but I have been taking a step back from test knitting and instead just waiting until the pattern's released and then deciding if I want to make it or not. But yeah, even after this pattern was released, I think I bought it as soon as I saw that it was released. I love the overall look of this sweater. There are also quite a few options to customize. There's either obviously short sleeves, long sleeves, I think 2 different body lengths. There's different types of ribbing and finishing options, and then even the types of increases along the armholes. There are different options for that as well. So before I cast on, I think I want to settle on what my initial plan is. Obviously, I can change those things as I go along, depending on what I like the look of. But I think if I have a bit of a general plan to start off with, then I won't hit any roadblocks in making decisions as I get through the project. The Knitty committee top is a set-in sleeve sweater or t-shirt construction. It's knit at a 26 stitch gauge using a fingering weight yarn. The yarn that I have chosen to use is the Drops Baby Merino, and I have it in the colour chocolate. I have already done a gauge swatch in this yarn. It's technically, I think, classified as a sport weight yarn, at least on Wool Warehouse where I bought this. It is 175 meters per 50 grams. So I suppose it's kind of in between a sport and a fingering weight. But I have found since knitting my relaxed tee that I feel like it falls into like a 4-ply category, at least for me. So back to this swatch. I did swatch on 2.75mm needles. The pattern recommends a 3mm needle and that's to achieve a 26 stitch gauge. I felt like because I thought this would be more like a sport weight yarn, it's superwash, so it grows a lot, I would just swatch on a needle size down, and that's kind of the logic that I followed for my relaxed tee, which I have here. I ended up knitting this garment actually on a 3mm needle, so I feel like this is more of a reliable gauge swatch than my tiny little swatch that I've done in the actual same coloured yarn. I want to be quite careful about the size that I choose for this pattern. It has very minimal ease built into it. The recommended ease is between 0 and 5 centimeters of positive ease. And I think there was a comment somewhere in the pattern about just making sure that you don't end up with too much ease. I think with the set-in sleeve design and the construction of it, I think it is intended to just have that only tiny little bit of ease. Obviously, when you're knitting your own clothes, you can knit them to whatever size you want. But I think for me, I will just follow the advice of the designer and stick to getting around about that much ease. So I've kind of decided that this will be my more reliable gauge swatch, and I knit it on 3mm needles and achieved a 26 stitch gauge. So that is great news. If you have seen any podcast episodes where I was talking about this, you'll know I had some fit issues, especially with the sleeves, because I used the wrong needle size and got a too tight gauge. But at least I've done all of the work and the effort for this project and can take my learnings into this next cast on. So back to picking a size, I have the pattern open on my computer here, and I just want to sit down and kind of work out what size I want to make for the body and for the sleeves. There have been quite a few instances where I feel like I've needed to go up sizes in the pattern to accommodate for my bicep circumference versus what I'm knitting for the rest of the garment. When I first mentioned that I was thinking about making this project, I did raise some concerns about making sure I picked the right size for the armholes and everything, and someone commented something really helpful to have a look at the measurements given in the pattern and essentially kind of knit the armhole to the length that you think you need. And the way they explained it made a lot more sense, but basically it will be a hybrid of a few different sizes, just to make sure that I had enough depth in the armhole, because previously I've just been knitting the body and the armhole and everything according to the size that I need, and then just picking up more stitches in the armhole when I realize it's too small. So I think that it will be smarter to kind of intentionally make it a bit more of a hybrid between a couple of sizes. I'm going to briefly mention my body measurements and working out what size I'm going to make. So if you don't want to listen to body measurements and things, that's totally fine. You can skip ahead to when I'm actually casting this on. So my bust size is 80 centimeters, and I'm just looking at the pattern sizes now. The first size fits a bust of 71 to 76. The second size is for 81 to 86. So technically I'm closer to the second size. Let's keep that in mind and have a look at the armhole depth. So the sizing chart gives the armhole depth, and it also gives the upper sleeve circumference, which I feel like is what I need to do. Let me grab my tape measure. I don't think I've ever actually measured my bicep circumference, so this could be interesting to see. My bicep is around 29 centimeters. The second size will give me 3 centimeters of positive ease in the bicep, which is okay. I think I prefer a little bit more. The next size will give me 6 centimeters of positive ease if I knit the third size on the sleeves. I think I'm also going to just measure my armhole depth and see where that leads me, because I feel like that's usually where I am most bothered by a tight sleeve. I just kind of held the measuring tape at the different points of how long it would be, and I do think the second size will be just a little bit too snug. So I'm kind of thinking I knit the second size for the body. Once I get to the armhole depth, I might need to look ahead in the pattern and just highlight when I need to do this, but just knit it to the length of the third size, and then I can knit the third size for the sleeves and won't have any issues with picking up extra stitches. I can just follow the instructions as it is. I'm just having a look at some of the other customization options for the pattern, and I think I mentioned the ribbing has a few options. Obviously, you can do whatever you like with ribbing. The sample photos have one with 2x2 rib, which I think looks beautiful, or something a little bit different, which I'm kind of tempted to try. It's essentially just some 2x2 ribbing, a purl round, and then 1x1 ribbing after that. And I think that's really unique. I might give it a go. The photo that I'm looking at also has the feature increases with that unique ribbing. I'm just not sure if I love how they look compared to just the regular increases. The longer I sit here and think about this, I think I am just going to do a little test swatch, not really for gauge, but more just to test the different increases, because I really don't want to have to do one way and then want to try the other way. I think if I just see them in the fabric, then I will be sure of my decision. I think it would be fun to do feature increases and try something a little bit different, but then sometimes the comfort zone is a comfort zone for a reason, because you know that you like it. Okay, let's just test it out on the fabric and see if I like it. These are the left-leaning increases, and I think I messed some of them up. They don't all look the same, especially these last ones here. I thought I messed up this one, but I don't really love how it's looking. The right-leaning ones do look a little bit better, but overall I'm just not really a fan. They kind of leave some holes in there. Maybe blocking would fix that, but they're not really my favorite. At least now I've made a decision, and yeah, I think I'll just stick to regular, make one right and make one left. I was also thinking about testing out the different ribbing, but I kind of just want to settle in for the evening and actually cast this on. And I'm going to make some soup for dinner, so maybe I will get that going and then I can actually just cast this on. update on my Knitty committee top. I have finished the back piece already. I cast this on Sunday evening and it's now Tuesday afternoon. And I feel like this has gone by so quickly considering it's on 3mm needles at quite a small gauge. But overall I'm enjoying the pattern so far and it's going quite smoothly. So obviously I've cast on at the top of the back neck here, and then you are instructed to work some short rows to give a little bit of shoulder shaping, and then you're knitting straight back and forth to make the armhole depth, which is obviously where I wanted to make some modifications. The length of the armhole for the second and third size wasn't that different for this section here. I think there were only 2 rows different in the sizes that I was trying to combine. So knowing that they are supposed to be in like length a little bit more different than just 2 rows, I read ahead to the section where you're shaping the armholes and doing increases here. And I calculated that there were quite a few more rows in the third size and the second size, which would give it more length but also more width. As I spoke about previously, I want the bust circumference, so the width of my sweater, to be the second size. So knowing that I didn't want to add any more increases in the armhole shaping here, I calculated how many more rows that would be and just added that many more rows into this section here to add more length without having to add more width, which hopefully makes sense and is hopefully the right thing to do. The good thing about filming a project vlog is that you get to see from the start to the finish on this process. This is obviously real time for me, so I have no idea if that's the right decision or not. I'm just trying not to overthink this too much, and I feel like either way it should end up at least fitting me, but it is fun to experiment and try and finesse the fit of a garment to, fit exactly how I want it to. I don't think I have too much more to say on what I've done so far. I did appreciate though that the number of rows and the length in centimeters and inches was provided in the pattern, especially for something like the armhole depth, where I really want to pay attention to things like that. So the next step in the pattern is to pick up along the shoulder on the cast on edge here, and the pattern also has you include stitch markers on the cast on edge, which I think is to assist with picking up the stitches for like the front yoke sections. So that's good. It should be pretty straightforward to do that next step, and looking forward to seeing how this comes together as a yoke. We have a yoke completed already. It seems to have gone by quite quickly. Obviously I'm making one of the smaller sizes, and I think being the set-in sleeve construction, the shoulder sections look really small. Like you're not knitting like a drop shoulder where you're creating a lot of fabric here in the yoke. So I think that's part of the reason why this has gone quite quickly. So I have just about joined this in the round and knit a few centimeters of the body, but I wanted to stop and just try it on, make sure I'm happy with the armhole depth and how it's fitting across the bust and everything. And I think at this point in the pattern I also need to do a little bit more measuring to determine the waist shaping. I want to see if it's something I want to include first of all, and if I do, I need to work out the increments at which I do the waist shaping. And that's the guidance is given in the pattern. So I'm going to try this on first and then take it from there. Quickly before I do that, I have noticed that this color of the yarn is creating a little bit of a different fabric than what I'm wearing, which is the same yarn at the same gauge. I'm not sure how well you're able to see, but I feel like in this color, the pinstripey effect of, I guess, this type of like superwash yarn and the way it's spun is a lot more obvious. I obviously haven't blocked this yet, so I'm hoping that will disappear a little bit or not look quite as severe once it's blocked, but I never really noticed that when I was working on this garment. So that's something interesting that I've noticed so far. There's not much I can do about it, so I'm not going to let it bother me, and yeah, I just want to try this on and see how it's fitting. Here's what I have so far. I feel like the choosing the size 2 for the body was a really good idea. I don't feel like this is tight at all, but I think I'll probably fit within the recommended, I think 0 to 5 centimeters of positive ease, or maybe a little bit closer to the 6 centimeters once it's blocked. In terms of the armhole depth, now I'm thinking, is it going to be too deep that I've like gone up a size essentially in the depth here? It is sitting quite low. I don't want it to look like there is too much fabric around here when I knit the sleeve. But saying that, obviously when you pick up stitches for the sleeve, that will kind of bring the armhole in a little bit if you're not picking up every single stitch. I'm kind of leaning towards just keeping it as it is and trusting the pattern and the process. Usually I like to at least like finish the rest of the yarn that I'm working on the body and then go ahead and pick up a sleeve. So I'm kind of thinking I might do that, although I do have quite a bit of this ball left, so it will be a lot of ripping back if I finish this and then I start the sleeve and realize I need to take out some of the yoke. So maybe I just attach another ball and just pick up a sleeve and knit a little bit of it just to confirm I'm happy with how it's fitting. Whilst I have this on, I think I'm just going to do some measuring to determine the waist shaping that I need to do. I have my tape measure to do some measurements on my body, but if that's not for you, you can skip ahead. I'm just having a read through the pattern now and looking over the waist measurements that it's graded to, and my waist is about 1/2 inch to 1 inch bigger than what the second size is graded to, but the third size is quite a big jump from there, which would be too big. So I think I'm going to stick with the instructions for the second size and obviously just try it on regularly, and I might end up omitting one of the last or like 1 or 2 decreases. I'm not really experienced with doing waist shaping, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to include it in here, but looking back at the pattern pictures, I do like how it is quite a close fitting garment across the whole body, so I think I will experiment with including it. The other measurement it gives is the average underarm to waist length, and that is 8 inches. So my actual underarm to my natural waist is almost 9 inches, so I think I'll probably include 1 additional round between each decrease just to give myself a little bit more space, so like the narrowest point doesn't happen before my waist. Okay, I think I'm ready to get this back on the needles, but I think I want to just pick up and start knitting the first sleeve. I might just do the short rows to shape the sleeve cap and try it on again and see if I'm happy with it before I start working on the body, just in case I do need to rip it back. I don't want to have to be ripping back a lot of the body first and then coming back to the yoke. So I think that's a sensible idea. It will give me a good peace of mind that, yeah, everything is fitting how I want it to fit. Okay, a little bit of a change of plan. I have picked up and started knitting the first sleeve, but as you can see, I've also picked up and knit the collar, but I'm not sure if I'm happy with it. I decided to go ahead and pick it up because, you know, it's like a quick and easy thing to do to make a project look a little bit more like finished as you're going. It was also kind of like the next step in the pattern before adding the sleeves, and that makes sense to me. I think if I'm checking for fit, it would be good to have the collar on there just in case everything is brought up a little bit. I think it would be good to have it on there. However, so as you can see, I've done the fancy ribbing, as it's called in the pattern, I think, with the 2x2 ribbing, the purl round, and then finishing with 1x1. And I'm just not really a fan of how it looks. Maybe it's this yarn. I also feel like it's a little bit too tight, and I can just tell that when I have this on, it's going to sit too close to my neck, and yeah, just not really what I want to be going for. I did follow the instructions, like the number of rows in the pattern and the recommended 2.5mm needles. I even did the setup rounds for my tubular bind off, but I just couldn't commit to binding it off. I just didn't love how it looked, and I didn't think I would like how it was going to fit. So I'm kind of thinking eventually I'll go back and just do 2x2 ribbing for the collar and maybe stick with the fancy ribbing just on the cuffs and the hem. But for the purposes of just checking the fit, I'm going to leave it for now. Eventually I'm thinking I'll end up doing a bib project block, so perhaps I'll leave the collar on there, see how it's fitting and looking after a block, and then make a decision. But anyway, the main thing I'm kind of worrying about at the moment is the sleeve. There are so many short rows in the sleeve, which makes sense. Obviously you have a lot of fabric to create because you didn't make so much in the yoke section here. But yeah, it's taking a little bit longer than I thought it would. It's definitely not a hard process. The instructions were really clear and easy to follow. And yeah, this isn't the first time I've knit a set-in sleeve construction like this with picking up sleeves and doing short rows. I quite enjoy doing it, but if you're someone who doesn't like short rows, yeah, good luck with this. The pickup rate for the sleeve is like 1 in every 2 stitches, so that made me feel a little bit more confident that it would shrink the armhole up a little bit, which I feel like it has. It is still comfortably fitting on my 60 centimeter cable, however, which is making me a little bit nervous. I'm just going to finish the short rows, and I still have quite a bit to go, and then knit a little bit, like a few centimeters of the sleeve to really gauge how it's fitting. I just don't want there to look like there's too much fabric under here and have any like weird creasing of the fabric. But saying that, I also really don't want it to be too tight. So I'm gonna just keep going on the sleeve and make a call from there. It's Friday afternoon now. I have finished my work for the week, so I'm just gonna sit outside and do some knitting and catch up on some knitting YouTube. It was about time I did another try on, and here is how my Knitty Committee top is looking so far, and I'm so happy with how this is going. I think I made a really good decision with lengthening the armhole depth here. I was a bit worried when I saw how deep it was on this side before I picked up the sleeve that it would be a little bit too big, but now that I've got it on and I've worked a little bit more of the body, I think that this will be perfect. And I can comfortably wear a t-shirt underneath it. I feel like as I'm moving around, like moving my arms up and down, it's not going to ride into my underarm. My actual underarm finishes around here, so there's a good couple of centimeters of, I guess, ease at the underarm. There's also some good amount of ease around the bicep, and I'm just following the instructions for the sleeve decrease rate for the 3rd size, and so far that is working out really well as well. I've just left the body on hold for now. I finished off the rest of the ball that I was knitting, and I think I've done 2 sets of waist decreases, and I'm a little bit worried about them starting so early. I feel like I'm only just like over my bust, so yeah, I'm gonna just have to see how that goes, and again keep trying it on, but I think it should be okay. There is still a good amount of ease in the body where I'm at now, so I think that will be fine. The other thing that I have changed since the last try on is the collar. I decided I didn't like how the collar was looking, and yeah, it was just wouldn't fit over my head comfortably even before binding off, so I just decided to rip it out and stick with just the 2x2 ribbing. I think I'll give it a go and do the feature ribbing on the cuffs and the hem, but I think just for me in the collar, I prefer how it looks as 2x2 rib. When I looked back at the pattern, the 2x2 ribbing was the same length regardless of which version you were doing, so I just had to rip out those extra few rounds and did the recommended bind off in the pattern. It's essentially a sewn bind off. It looks like an Italian bind off, but instead of having to rearrange the stitches, into 1x1 ribbing, you just work the stitches as they are. And I really like how it looks. It was a little bit of a confusing process. It took me a while to wrap my head around it, but I will definitely be using that technique in the future. The one thing I'm not 100% set on is the length of the collar. I kind of wish I'd added a couple of extra rounds. I don't think it helps that the t-shirt I'm wearing underneath has a really high neckline. But yeah, I'm not sure if I want to go back and add just maybe 1 or 2 extra rounds. I followed the instructions in the pattern and used the same 2.5mm needle, but yeah, I'm not sure how much I love the depth of it. It just means that I'll have to unpick a sewn bind off just for the sake of 1 or 2 rounds. But I think I'll just keep knitting the rest of the body, the sleeves, see how it looks with the cuff and the hem, and then maybe decide after that. I've had a lovely weekend so far. You might be able to hear it is raining so much today. It has pretty much not stopped raining since this morning. It woke me up quite early this morning, so I got a little bit of knitting time in, which was nice to get some more work done on the sleeve. Yesterday was such a beautiful day. We're definitely heading into that in between. It's not quite spring, but it's not really winter weather. You would have seen a clip of me visiting Cozy Cottage Yarns, which is a pretty new yarn store that has opened in Perth. And it was, such a beautiful shop. They don't have a huge range of yarn, but what they do have is really nicely curated. And I want to say mostly Australian hand-dyed yarn. So that was really nice to be able to see some of that yarn in person. They had woolen works, and I picked up a skein from Rainbow and Sprinkles and I think it's Natural Fibre Arts, who are both Perth-based dyers. But since today is absolutely miserable outside, I think that does make a really good excuse to just sit inside and get cozy and keep going on my beautiful top. Hello, it's been a few days since I've given an update on the Knitty Committee top, but I have a whole sleeve finished. It kind of went by really quickly once I got through all of the short rows for the sleeve cap. The actual sleeve seemed to go by fairly quickly. I suppose it doesn't have a huge amount of ease in it, and I was using my little Addy Sock Wonder needles, and I find I can knit quite quickly on these because obviously one tip is a little bit longer than the other, and yeah, I just find them quite comfortable to knit with, and I will rather do that than use magic loop. Here is a closer look at the cuff, and obviously I have added the feature ribbing, or not just the standard 2x2 ribbing like I ended up doing at the collar, and I really like it in the cuff. I think it looks so nice. It's a very unique type of ribbing, which I mentioned, and I like that it has these garter bumps to break it up a little bit into each section so you can distinctly see its different types of ribbing. The pattern instructs you to basically knit all the ribbing inside out because I think most people find that their ribbing looks neater on the wrong side. I've always found my ribbing looks different on the right and the wrong side, but I've never really had a preference for either one. But yeah, I thought because the pattern kind of specified and had instructions for that, not that it's a difficult technique, I would do it anyway. And yeah, I quite like the effect of it. Essentially, you just do a short row and then turn and just knit the ribbing as you normally would, and you're just working from the wrong side. I did finish off with a tubular cast off, which I think looks quite neat, but I am worried that it's not very stretchy. It does stretch out enough for me to get my hand in and out pretty comfortably, but compared to the rest of the sleeve, I feel like it's a little bit restrictive, so I might have to end up swapping that for a different bind off. I think I'm going to leave it for now and keep working the second sleeve, probably do a block at the end, and decide then if I like how the bind off is fitting or whether I do need to go back and change it for something else. Speaking of mid-project blocks, I am an avid believer in mid-project blocking, and most of my projects at some point get blocked before they're finished, but for this one I just haven't felt the need to, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Usually it's because I'm concerned about the fit or how the fabric is coming out, like the stitch texture or the yarn or something. But for this one, I'm so happy with how it's fitting. I haven't really felt the need to do a mid-project block, which is I'm going to say it's a good thing at this point. Most importantly at the moment, I'm so happy with how the sleeve and the underarm is fitting. I think I have more ease than what the pattern would suggest or have for like my measurements, but I feel like it's more important for me to be happy with how it's fitting and be comfortable wearing it, which I absolutely am. I do hope that I don't get too much growth with blocking. This is a superwash yarn, and I found in other projects where I've used this, it does grow a little bit and you can like block it quite aggressively to get more length where you want it. So I think if I just block this normally and don't pin out and block aggressively, then I should be able to keep the shape and the dimensions of it now, or at least pretty close to what it is now. The sleeve is like a tad short. I just knit the length according to the pattern. I follow the decrease rate, the number of decreases, and like the number of rows for the cuff. But I think with blocking, like I mentioned, this yarn can grow a little bit, so I think it will be the perfect length. Speaking of the sleeve decreases, I really like how they're formed in this pattern. There are quite a few stitches in between each decrease, and I feel like it creates what looks a little bit like almost a gusset at the underarm. I feel like it creates a really nice effect. I think that is everything I have to update you on. I'm obviously working on the second sleeve at the moment. And yeah, again, I felt like the short rows and the sleeve cap, they took me quite a few evenings worth of knitting to get done. But now that that's done, I feel like the actual length of the sleeve is flying off the needles. I know I've mentioned it a couple of times, but obviously I'm making one of the smaller sizes. So when I say that I feel like this is taking no time at all and it's working up really quickly, I do acknowledge that making one of the smaller sizes inherently means that it's quicker as well. So all I have left to do now is knit the second sleeve, or at least finish knitting the second sleeve, and then all that will be left is to do the body. You can see I've only done maybe an inch or two on the body, so I do have the majority of the body to go. So it's not almost at the end, but I feel like now I have one sleeve on and I'm happy with the fit. That's not quite in the back of my mind as much that I might need to rip back. So I'm quite happy with myself now. I think I can really relax into the project and yeah, just follow the pattern as it's written. We are going camping this weekend, so I'm kind of debating whether I bring this along with me. I only have this and one other active whip at the moment, which are a pair of socks for my dad for Father's Day. I've already finished one of those socks, so I just need to cast on and knit the second one. So I'm kind of leaning more towards taking the socks, but I might take this along as like a bit of car knitting just to change things up a little bit. I'll see how much work I end up getting done on this over the next few days. There is actually no deadline for me to finish this, and I feel like the last week or so has also been quite cold weather, so I don't feel like any seasonal change pressure to get this finished super quickly so I can wear it. I have a feeling by the time I finish this, we should be pretty much into spring weather, which I imagine is when I will want to get the most amount of wear out of this. So I think I've timed this project pretty well to finish it and be able to wear it once it's done. I'm so close to finishing my Knitty committee top. As you can see, I have finished all the knitting. I finished off the bind off this morning on the body, and All I need to do now is give it a block and let it dry and weave in the final few ends. A couple of things I hope to change a little bit with blocking are mainly just to do with the ribbing. I can especially feel it on the sleeves. I feel like the cuffs are shrinking in quite a lot with this type of ribbing, and I think because it's quite an elastic yarn, the ribbing really wants to cinch in. I am hoping that the bind off on the sleeve will be loose enough. It's a little bit tight, and I think on this one that's a bit tighter, I've left the end. I haven't woven it in yet in case I want to redo the bind off. This sleeve is not too bad, and on the body I made sure to do it quite loose so it would be nice and stretchy. I do also want to stretch out the ribbing a little bit on the body because I feel like it is clinging in quite a lot around my hips, and I think that's also amplified with the waist shaping. At this point before blocking, I don't love how the body is fitting with the waist shaping, but I am 99% sure that's just because the ribbing is cinching it all in and is kind of making it want to ride up. And if I'm just moving around like this and lifting up my arms, it's going to give this like ballooning mushroom effect, which I really don't like, and that's usually why I avoid doing waist shaping. This is all the yarn that I have left, which I'm actually quite surprised about. I thought I would have a lot more, so in a way I'm glad I did the waist shaping because I'm not sure whether I would have had enough yarn to knit the whole body without doing it. So in the end I think it was a right decision, but yeah, time to give this a good soak, and I can't wait to see what it looks like once it's blocked. Here is the final look at my Knitty Committee top. This has been quite an interesting knit, and there are a few things I wanted to share with you and wrap up my final thoughts and feelings on the pattern and the final garment that I have at the end of this process. The pattern itself is written really well. I really enjoyed following along the whole process, and considering there are so many different options for the sleeves, the body, the ribbing, the increases, everything is laid out very clearly, so there's no doubt about what you're meant to be doing depending on the specific customization options that you have selected. I really love the ribbing that I've chosen to do on the cuffs and the hem. I think it's such a unique feature. My mum was actually looking at this sweater the other day and she said, oh, I really love how the ribbing looks on that. Like, it's such an interesting feature. She's not a knitter herself, but I think she can appreciate little details like that. And I have a feeling that might have been a subtle hint that she would want one for herself. Obviously, I chose not to do the different types of ribbing on the collar and just kept it with 2x2 ribbing. I am quite happy with my decision to do that. I do think I could have gone back and added a couple of extra rounds of 2x2 ribbing just to make it a little bit bigger, but I don't dislike it enough as it is to go back and undo the bind off, and yeah, just for the sake of a couple of rounds. Those are the positive things that I have to say about this, but unfortunately there are some things that I'm just not quite as satisfied with about this final garment. I will admit, when I blocked it and it had dried and I tried it on for the first time, I was really disheartened when I put this on, and I kind of thought this whole project was a big failure and I was going to have to rip everything out. When I first put it on, it was still slightly damp, which I don't think helped the situation, but it was so oversized. This garment is designed with only a very small amount of ease, so when I put it on, it just didn't really look right. It didn't look how I imagined. I mainly noticed this in the armholes, and I felt like they were so low down, and they had like completely changed since before I had blocked it and tried it on. I was really happy with how it was fitting, but the armholes were just sagging down really low, and it created so much extra fabric around here, which bunched up when I had my arms down, and there was just too much ease across the bust. And as well with the bottom ribbing, even after blocking, it had cinched in quite a lot around my hips, and it just created a very awkward shape to the garment. The other thing is the sleeves were incredibly long. They were going way past my hands, And I don't think it really suits this type of sweater to have really long sleeves because they are like fairly fitted. They definitely have positive ease, but they're not oversized intentionally. So I had a little bit of a panic moment, and then I remembered my relaxed tee, which I knit in the same yarn, and remembering how the sleeve shrunk up and the body shrunk up. This yarn is quite elastic, so everything had kind of like compressed back in after a few wears. I was feeling really impatient, so I actually put this in the tumble dryer for I think 2 rounds of 5-minute cycles and kept a very close eye on it. It's super washable, so I wasn't too worried about it felting, but I didn't want it to like shrink in too much, and that really helped. This is how it is fitting now after it's completely dry, and yeah, I feel like it has shrunk itself back in a little bit. The sleeves are still a fairly decent length and they definitely go past my wrist, so I'm gonna just see how it goes with wearing them. I have noticed that as I wear sweaters or tops, eventually the sleeves do kind of ride up during the day, I think, as they kind of crease in the elbow. I did end up going back and redoing both of the bind-offs on the sleeves. They were just too tight, and then one of them was tighter than the other. I redid the really tight one and that was nice and stretchy, and then I felt like the other one was too tight, so I've just gone back and redone both of them, and they're much better now. And because the sleeves are a bit long and they fall over my hands, I feel like now they're a bit looser, it fits a little bit better as well. I'm not a very big fan of the waist shaping. This is the second time I've done waist shaping on a garment, and both of them were by the same designer. And I just don't really think it's something that I like the look of and the fit of. I think because I have a bit more ease around the bust and up here, but with the waist shaping and the way that it fits and stops across my hips here, this has basically negative ease, and I feel like it's stretching over a little bit. It creates the illusion of having too much fabric around here, and when I'm moving around, I feel like it bunches up a little bit, which I don't really love. Thankfully, it's quite stretchy, so I think when I go to block this again, I might just try and block out the waist shaping, if that makes sense, and pull this as tight as it will go. I already mentioned this, but I would not have had enough yarn to finish this if I didn't include the waist shaping. This is all the yarn that I have left. I haven't weighed this, but I would say it's probably 30-ish grams. And that means that I used a lot more yarn than I should have for this project, and thankfully I way over ordered yarn. For the second size in the pattern, the yarn usage is 862 meters, and for the third size it's 968 meters. And I was expecting to fall somewhat in between those, seeing as I did a hybrid between the two sizes. But I ended up using 1,099 meters, and that seems like quite a lot over. I can't really account for that because if I had knit everything in the third size, I still shouldn't have used that much yarn. But regardless of that, thankfully I had enough, and I've pretty much used all the yarn I have, apart from that little scrap, which will go into my sweet shop blanket. My final gauge has also ended up slightly bigger than it should have, but I think it'll be interesting to measure it again after a few wears. Like I was saying, the yarn I find has a tendency to shrink itself back in. So the pattern gauge is 26 stitches and 37 rounds or rows, and my final gauge at the moment is like 25 and a half stitches and 34 rows. I do think that's why the sleeves have ended up a little bit too long, and potentially also because my armhole is a tiny bit deeper than it maybe should be, which means that it's dropped a little bit lower, and then that makes the sleeve sit a little bit lower than it should. But that's okay, I would much rather have the armhole be a little bit deeper than be too tight, and something I was really worried about when I cast this on was trying to decide which size I was going to make. The recommended ease in the pattern is 0 to 5 centimeters, and I'd say I'm very close to that 5 centimeters. Realistically, I'm probably more like 5.5 centimeters of positive ease. But I think if I had knit the first size in the body, I don't know how it would have looked then having the third size in the sleeve, and I think the second size for the sleeves would have been too small. Now that I've got these ones on there and can see how they fit, which is, I wouldn't really want them much tighter. So I think I'm happy with my size selection, especially for a winter garment where I would potentially want to wear a t-shirt or something underneath it. If I was to knit this again, it would maybe be a summer version, and then I would consider going down a size for less positive ease and fit closer to that 0 to 1 or 2 centimeters of positive ease instead. I forgot to mention when I was talking about the collar, I have already added elastic into the bind off just to make sure that it was sitting in a little bit closer to my neck. I did find after blocking it had stretched out a little bit, and I thought as just a preventative measure I would add some elastic in anyway, especially with this small amount of ribbing. It doesn't do as much, I think, as more ribbing to keep everything nice and close. I think that also helped make sure that the sleeves were sitting where they should be and not make them quite as comically oversized and long as they were before I had done that and like dried it properly and put it in through the tumble dryer. My final thoughts are that I think I'm happy with this. I think I like it, and I think it's something I will wear a decent amount. It's not my favorite thing that I've ever knit. I do really like the color, the yarn is nice and soft, and because it is so lightweight, this only weighs 314 grams. I think it will be something that is quite versatile. I honestly think the main thing is the waist shaping, and I think that's what's throwing me off. Having the ribbing sit so close against my body when like the rest of this I purposely made without having too much. If you have been considering making your own Knitty Committee top, I would definitely recommend the pattern and making one for yourself. It's great that there are lots of different options, so it's very versatile. You could make lots of different types or like styles and looks of garments depending on the yarn that you use and yeah, the different customization options that you go for. That is everything I have to mention about this project. I really hope you've enjoyed watching this vlog, and I would love to know if you have made the Knitty Committee top before, if you're thinking about making one, and if you are, let me know what options that you would choose or the yarn that you're thinking about making it in. Especially if you're thinking about a summer version, I would love to get some inspiration for potential yarn options for a summer top. I'd love for you to subscribe if you don't want to miss out on any of my other videos and to check out the other things that I am working on. And I will see you in the next video. Bye!